Things have been going very poorly. Underlying sadness re-emerging. I just want so badly to be able to experience that creative burst again. Overcoming perfectionism that I've never heard anyone talk about before. This was probably not a good thing for a primary care physician to say, but she said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Because if Van Gogh had treated his mental illness, then he wouldn't have produced all of his art. Could this medication be impacting my creativity? It has been 5 days since I last saw my psychiatrist and stopped taking my SSRI completely. So back in December is when I started realizing how intensely numb I had gotten, and I wanted to see what it was going to be like to either be on a lower dose or come off completely. I had been taking, for the past easily 2 years, I've been taking the highest available dose. But for past like 5 weeks or so, I've been taking only 50 milligrams, which is a much lower dose. So then on Monday, 5 days ago, saw the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist said you could just stop taking it now, and it will be about 2 months before you're able to see like what you actually feel like off the medication. Because I'm not sure if my goal is go back onto a lower dose or try to find a different medication. But first, I want to see what I feel like off the medication, because I had gotten really numb. And I had not realized how numb I had gotten until last fall when my cat died, and I recognized that I was not feeling as much as I should be feeling or as much as I expected to be feeling. And so that was when I started thinking I want to come off of this medication. And I'm struggling with a lot of things. But it's been 5 days now since I've been completely off of it. And I'm currently not doing well. I know he said it would be 2 months before I felt like I knew how I was feeling off of it. So I'm going to see him again in 6 weeks. We can reevaluate. But today, I'm so tired, and I've been having like full body chills, and like my brain feels like it's like not fully on, which is annoying. I don't know. Before, I'd been feeling numb, and then sort of numb plus slightly hopeful that getting off of the medication would get rid of that numb feeling and make my writing come easier, because I have not had a good writing time easily over 5 years. I don't even know how long it has been. So I'm currently working on, this is my 8th novel. My 5th novel. After my 5th novel is when I stopped querying, because everything was just always ending in rejection. But that 5th novel, I had written the first draft of it in 3.5 weeks. It just absolutely poured out of me. And I wrote that before I started taking any kind of SSRI. And it has been easily over 4 years since I've had that creative burst type of feeling, and I really miss that. And I had been really hoping that by coming off of this medication, like once I recognized that the medication was really numbing me, that by coming off I would be able to experience that creative burst again. It's only been 5 days, so like I can't fairly judge, even though my brain is judging, even though I know I shouldn't be. But I'm not feeling that creative burst. I have not worked on this story in easily over a week. I don't even know how long it has been, but I'm not sure how coherent all of these thoughts are right now. But also, I haven't been being hard on myself for not working on the story for so long, and it's kind of an odd place to be, because I had recognized that I'd been getting really numb on the medication, but now that I've been off of it for 5 days, I'm like numb plus underlying sadness. And I'm not sure if that's a result of coming off of the medication or if it's underlying sadness re-emerging. But I have not been being hard on myself. My therapist, who is not my psychiatrist, but my therapist, says that my inner voice is like the teacher, Fletcher, from the movie Whiplash. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but it's about like a sadistic teacher. And my inner voice is the voice of that man. But currently my inner voice has not been being like that because I've not been being hard on myself about not writing for so long. And I can't tell if that's a good thing, like I'm being gentler on myself, or if it's a result of me just feeling like nothing matters and like just why even try. So it's a difficult thought place to be, because part of me feels like if I was being that hard on myself, I would be more motivated to get back into my writing. I don't know. I mean, I think that's a tiny little part of like overcoming perfectionism that I've never heard anyone talk about before. Like the voice in your head has to change. The voice in my head has always been brutal, like sadistic towards me, like Fletcher from Whiplash. And I can't tell if me being gentler on myself is a sign of me getting better, or if it's a sign of me not caring. You know, I don't, it's very hard to tell what's happening inside of my head, but I just want so badly to be able to experience that creative burst again. And it has been so many years since I've had that, and I've been on this medication for so many years that it's very hard to tell what has caused what. Or, you know, it's a chicken and egg situation. Like, I can't tell if I've experienced, like, lost time. Not, like, in the sense where I, like, have no memories, but in the sense of, was I numbed all that long time from taking the medication where I could have been experiencing creative bursts? Or was the medication helping me not be so sad? And so I, like, wouldn't have been experiencing creative bursts anyway, you know? If I hadn't been on it, because I would have just been so sad, so I'm not experiencing the creative bursts. It's very hard to tell. Several years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, I went to the primary care physician in order to get a referral to some kind of psychiatric thing that I needed. And at the time, this was probably not a good thing for a primary care physician to say, but she said, "Are you sure you want to do this referral?" Because she had said, if Van Gogh had treated his mental illness, then he wouldn't have produced all of his art. And at the time, I was, like, really offended that she said that. And actually, like, logically, that was probably a very bad thing for her to say. Like, very dismissive of mental health. And also, like, Van Gogh ended his own life when he was 36. So if he'd have lived, he'd have been able to produce much more art. And so it just felt like a callous thing for a doctor to say. But at the same time, I am currently wondering, did I lose all of those years being on this medication if it was numbing me to the point where I wasn't being able to write? And so now I'm no longer sure. Maybe she was right all those years ago, even though it hurt my feelings when she said that. I don't know, I'm kind of babbling today. My brain is not fully functioning today. I don't know. Before I try to expand on my thoughts anymore, let me take you back 2 weeks in time to when I was actually going to start this vlog. And then we can get caught back up to today, and then maybe I will have a better grasp on my thoughts, because right now my brain is not fully on. So we will come back to this, but first, let's go back in time to 2 weeks ago and get back caught up to today. Hello. I currently have 76 segments of story left to address in draft 2 of my young adult fantasy that I call my magical mystery. And I have 85 days left to address them before the end of May, which is my goal for completing draft 2. Just so you know, I'm counting a segment of story as scenes and connective tissue. In my draft 1, it was entirely scenes, no connective tissue, so all of the connective tissue I'm having to write new from scratch. And I have scrapped the entire third act from draft 1, so when I get to the third act of this book, I'm going to have to be writing all of those scenes from scratch too. But we're not there yet. So today, I'm about to begin scene 23. There are 55 scenes currently in draft 2 in my outline, but I skipped the first 5 scenes and their connective tissue in draft 2. This iteration of draft 2, at least. If you've been following me at all, I began draft 2 3 years ago. But then I took a 1.5 year break from it after working on it for a year and a half, so it's a complicated situation. But in this iteration of draft 2, I started on scene 6. There are 55 scenes in the story, and I'm assuming each scene has connective tissue between it. And today we are going to begin scene 23. I do want to walk 2 miles on the treadmill. I'm not sure if I'm going to be reading 40 pages. That has been my goal for each day so far this year. And I also have a Fiverr order that I need to do. I edit fiction for people on Fiverr, and I very much love it. So if you have fiction that you would like me to edit, send it my way. So it is the next day, and I did not do any writing yesterday. Someone is hammering outside. I don't know if you can hear them. I almost refilmed the intro to this video because I was like, they don't need to know that I skipped a day. But I did skip a day, so that's just part of life, I guess. The time change was yesterday, and that threw me just completely off. So I did end up walking my 2 miles, and I did complete that Fiverr order. I did not read anything, and I did not even open my magical mystery document. So today, we will begin now with scene 23. I'm not feeling great about the writing today, the potential of writing. I know I need to just do it, and I know that, like, in all of these videos I keep being like, I'm not feeling great about this writing. My hope is that after draft 2 and after like a few rounds of edits, I start feeling a lot stronger about the story. My issue is right now, the story in my head is not at all reflected by the story on the page, and that just gets me down. But I don't have to be feeling good about things right now because right now we're truly just trying to make the story exist on paper. So some iteration of the story has to exist on paper in order for me to actually start like revising rather than just like figuring out what the story is in this world. Obviously, the first draft was just me writing the world. Didn't recognize it at the time. And so now I'm trying to just write a story in the world and I can revise it later. And so even though I haven't been feeling good about all these different days that I've been writing for these videos, I'm still feeling hopeful that at some point in the future I will start feeling good about it because I love the story in my head so much. I just haven't yet been able to see that reflected back to me on the page. But that's where we are. We're going to begin again today, trying with scene 23. So it is 1 week later. But all has not been lost. Because even though this past week I've been really struggling to focus for long periods of time on my writing, luckily I found that scenes 23, 24, 25, and 27 already exist in draft 2, mostly completely. They are not piecemeal scenes. I only needed to write one piece of connective tissue between scenes 24 and 25, but otherwise all the connective tissue was already there, and so I literally just had to read through those scenes, make sure they were consistent with what the story is currently doing in draft 2, and then mark them done for draft 2. In the future, I'm sure they're going to need some kind of revision, but for now, those scenes are literally all done for draft 2, which is good because I have been struggling to focus on my writing. I found while I was reading through those scenes, part of the reason why I have not been filming is because scene 26 I have to write from scratch, and so I skipped it, and then I got to scene 28 and I also have to write it from scratch, and I was like, well, maybe I should skip this too. And then I started getting overwhelmed because I realized that going forward from where I am in the document, most of the scenes are either extremely piecemeal or gonna have to be written new from scratch. And that was overwhelming to deal with, so I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm feeling kind of good today, so I'm hoping I can at least make good headway on one of these two scenes, scenes 26 or scene 28. I initially skipped them, but I have decided I shouldn't just start skipping everything that I need to write from scratch, or else I'm never going to get this done. So I'm hoping today I can at least make good headway on one of those scenes, even if I don't finish an entire segment of story today. That is my hope and my goal and my plan. So even though I skipped scene 26, scene 27 ends on page 76 of 107 single-spaced pages in my draft 2 document, which means I still have 31 pages in my draft 2 document of scenes that I haven't looked at yet. So it's not like I have to start writing every scene from scratch going forward. That's definitely going to be the case in the third act, because at the third act I stopped. I didn't even bring any of those scenes over from my draft 1 document into this document, so this document ends at the end of act 2. That is still 31 pages away, so I have 31 pages of piecemeal scenes left to read through, and I considered reading through all of those and like working on the piecemeal scenes before coming back to scenes 26 and 28 and writing scenes from scratch. But I ultimately decided against that because it just felt like the right thing to do, and writing scenes that are piecemeal is sort of just as hard as writing scenes from scratch a lot of the time, so I wasn't sure I was really saving anything. So the good news is, for both scene 26 and 28, I have a gist of what needs to happen in the scene, so they're not like totally blank in my mind, which is good. Especially scene 28, though, is a very intimidating scene for me to write because it's like a substantial moment in the story, and I'm a little bit concerned. But hopefully I can just get my focus together today and get back to working on this in order to make substantial progress. The only reason I was able to finish all of those scenes, 23, 24, 25, and 27, was because they didn't hardly need anything. I just had to read through them, write one piece of connective tissue, and call it good. And that took me an entire week. So we're a little bit nervous. So that was 5 days ago. Here we are on my habit tracker. I don't know if you can tell, but I have not done anything in so long. I haven't been writing a segment of my story, walking 2 miles, reading 40 pages, I've been kind of doing okay with eating produce. I don't do very well, like 5 a day. I try to eat one a day because I'm so bad about eating produce. I've been doing okay with my one a day, but other than that, things have been going very poorly. So my fifth novel, which was the last novel that I queried, it was also the last novel I wrote before starting the SSRI. I wrote the first draft of that in 3.5 weeks, and still deep down in my soul, I believe that that is the best book I have ever written. And I know like my writing confidence took a big hit because I submitted that story for like over 2 years to like well over 100 agents. Nobody wanted it. Nobody thought it was good enough to be published. And that makes me very sad because I still believe that's the best book I've ever written, and that means that like maybe I'm just not good enough, which is a difficult thought to have. But since then, I have written one complete novel and two partial novels. The partial novels being this magical mystery that I'm currently working on, draft 2, and then that adult contemporary that I got to 36,000 words into draft 1, and then I just had to stop fighting that novel. I fought that novel for so long and I just could not access it. And like, part of me thinks my deep struggle with creativity over these last several years has A, been very much impacting my writing, but B, has been perhaps at least being slightly caused by being on this SSRI. And I don't know if it was being on such a high dose, and like maybe I would do better going back on the lower dose. Maybe that's as much as I can hope for, that slightly numb, but at least not like fully numb. I don't know. Part of the problem is absolutely on me because I am afraid of talking to my psychiatrist. It's a problem. I'm just like afraid to speak to that man when I'm there. I like don't want to ask questions. I don't want to have needs. I have a very hard time talking to him. So I haven't been able to ask just like, could this medication be impacting my creativity? Could there be a different medication that could help me with my anxiety and depression without impacting my creativity? It's like when you look at the Google, which is not something you should do for medicine, but when you look at the Google, it does say that, like in general, nobody ever says that this SSRI impacts creativity. So like maybe it's just all me, and I'm just I'm out of words or something. I just can't write anymore. I don't know. I mean, it's been so long, so many years since I've had one of those deep creative bursts, and like maybe it just happens to coincide with the years that I've been on this medication. But like maybe coming off the medication won't fix anything, and I'll just never have one of those good creative bursts again. I wrote that fifth novel. It was the best novel I've ever written. It wasn't good enough to be published, and I'll never write anything even as good as that again. Like maybe I'm just out of words. I don't know. It's very hard to tell what's going on with my creativity. And like I know part of it is influenced by the enormous amount of rejection, because the fifth novel was the last novel that I queried, but I had queried the previous 4 novels, and I had nothing but rejection for well over 10 years of submitting novels. And I know that has gotten to me, and that impacts my ability to like trust my writing and my creative process. So like maybe that's totally disconnected from being on this SSRI, and it just was a coincidence that this massive lapse in creativity happened while I was on this medication for so long. It's very hard to tell. And like I probably could have better information if I wasn't so scared of talking to my psychiatrist, but I am. And so I don't know. I'm in a difficult place because I feel very hopeless about my writing right now. I just feel like I haven't had one of those creative bursts in over 4 years. Maybe I'll never have another one. Maybe it doesn't even matter because the best book I ever wrote wasn't good enough to be published. So I don't know. I'm having a hard time is the problem. I'm struggling. I'm really struggling. And I'm sad about it. And it's just very difficult / impossible to differentiate, what causes what. Or what just happens to be occurring at the same time, creativity-wise, medication-wise. The result of 10 years of rejection-wise, maybe that's just a compounding factors causing me to not being able to be creative with my writing. I don't know. I mean, like, maybe there's no way out of it, and this is just me for the rest of my life now. I don't know. I wish I did know, but I don't know. I just wish I could say, in 2 months, when I'm fully adjusted to being off of this medication, I'll know whether or not I'm going to have those creative bursts again. Or even, like, in 6 months, I would know whether or not trying out a different medication would help with my mental well-being while also not reducing my creative bursts. But I can't know that right now, and so I'm just sitting here not knowing anything, and it's a hard time, and it's a sad time, and I'm just feeling down, and I'm not feeling good, and I'm not feeling like writing, and I also feel like even if I did like force myself to write, continue working on these segments of draft 2, they're never going to be good enough to be published. Like, nobody's ever going to want to read them, so like maybe it's all pointless anyway. And I can't tell how much of that is like true and how much of that is impacted by my, unwell mental state. And how much of my unwell mental state is the result of stopping my medication 5 days ago, or just my brain, It's all just a mess in my brain right now, and I'm sad about it. That's the gist. Okay, it is the next day. I still feel the same, but my therapist told me to write down every day how I'm feeling, just so I can like keep track of what it's like coming off of this medication. So I did that yesterday. I wrote, exhausted but can't sleep, sore eyes, body chills, brain fog, can't focus, sad/hopeless. So with that little poem of symptoms, I'm going to do that again today, and hopefully today I will be feeling better. It has now been 9 days since I stopped taking the SSRI, and I feel almost entirely the same. But yesterday I had a little moment of hope that the numbness might be receding, because I was reminded of that quote that says, "You are not the voice in your head, you are what listens." And when I was reminded of that, it made me tear up, and I have not teared up in years, I feel. It takes an enormous amount for me to tear up. And I miss that, being struck by something, a piece of music or a quote or something, and tearing up. And it could be because I have not been sleeping hardly at all. My insomnia has gotten real bad. But I also took it as just a little bit of hope that perhaps the numbness could be receding. It's only been 9 days, so it could be nothing, but I'm taking it as a sign of hope. Also, I do offer fiction editing on Fiverr, anything from short stories or single chapters to whole novels. If anybody has a story out there that they'd like for me to look at, please check out the link in the description box below. Thank you!